Story Recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a comedy and romance film called 100 Girls. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. One night, college student Matthew attended a party at a ladies' dormitory where he pressed the elevator button for a girl carrying her laundry. Then, the power suddenly went out, but that didn't stop Matthew from having a fun conversation with the girl and eventually making love to her. Unfortunately, Matthew didn't see her face, and the girl was already gone in the morning. Because of that, Matthew becomes determined to find that mystery girl. However, Matthew doesn't get any support from his friend Rod, who doesn't understand why he's too eager to find the girl from the elevator. Matthew explains he's never had that kind of success with a woman before, and he recalls several incidents wherein he made a fool out of himself in front of a girl. But despite that, Rod doesn't really pay attention to what he says and just randomly talks about how he can make his manhood longer. Then, Rod's mood suddenly changes when Matthew shows him the underwear the girl left in the elevator, shamelessly grabbing it from his friend and smelling it. So Matthew takes it back and starts doing his homework, ignoring Rod as he watches TV. Moments later, Matthew talks to Rod about how he'll get into the ladies' dormitory. He then throws a bag full of mice through the dormitory's window before pretending to be a maintenance man. Once he's inside the building, Matthew starts looking for the matching undergarment to the underwear he found. Unfortunately, Matthew doesn't find what he's looking for and just decides to call it a day. However, Matthew witnesses Crick giving his girlfriend Patty a hard time, so he steps in and tells the big guy to stop. Matthew is scared that Crick will easily beat him up, but he still insults him and calls him names. At the same time, Matthew keeps thinking that he'd rather have Crick go Mike Tyson on him than see Patty get hurt. To save Patty, Matthew reaches out and pinches Crick's chest. The guy can only scream in pain, but somehow he manages to do the same to Matthew. The two stand there and continue to hurt each other, and Matthew eventually gives up. So Crick warns Matthew he'll be back for him, and he also tells Patty he'll deal with her later. Once Crick is gone, Patty gives Matthew some Meadol. Then, Patty lifts Matthew's shirt and sees he's all bruised, so she uses the cold can of beer to keep the bruises from getting worse. After that, Matthew makes it clear that he knows who Patty is, and he can't help but admire her beauty. Meanwhile, Patty tries making out with Matthew, but the guy suddenly feels uncomfortable and holds back. Confused, Patty says that Matthew is probably worried about what people say about her. However, Matthew assures her that's not the case and even says he's all for experimentation. He then takes the small balls on the nightstand and plays with them, thinking they're used to relieve tension. Unfortunately, Matthew gets embarrassed when Patty tells him what the balls are for and immediately leaves. After that, Matthew talks to Rod and tells him he'll continue pretending to be a maintenance man until he finds his mystery girl. Then, Matthew says he plans to create a problem every day between classes and homework, and the ladies in the dormitory will have no other choice but to let him in. However, Matthew sometimes encounters problems, especially if the girl who needs his help is intimidating. One time, Matthew goes to the ladies' dormitory to help a beautiful girl named Cynthia with a problem in her bathroom. Unfortunately, Matthew keeps stuttering, but Cynthia chooses to ignore that. Then, he also helps fix the girl's television, and that's when Arlene invites him to play foosball. The loser of each goal will have to remove one article of clothing, and of course, Matthew ends up taking off most of what he's wearing. Moments later, Matthew finally loses, and the girls help him remove his shorts. Luckily, Matthew's manhood impresses them all, and Matthew proudly walks out of there. After his game with Arlene, Matthew tells Rod that he lost a game to a girl. Then, they start talking about female body parts, wondering why God equipped women with all the weapons for seduction. However, Rod doesn't really like talking about that and eventually tells Matthew to stop, saying he's freaking him out. The next day, Matthew messes with the air conditioning system in the ladies' dormitory. This time, it's too hot, so the girls are forced to remove their clothes. Of course, Rod and Matthew watch everything from their room, and Matthew says he still has no idea who his mystery girl is. At the same time, Matthew tells his friend that all the girls in the dormitory have distinct personalities before mentioning their names one by one. One Saturday morning, Matthew gets careless. He uses the bathroom of one of the young ladies in the dormitory and washes his hands. Unfortunately, Matthew has left the toilet seat up, and the girl quickly notices that someone's been there. She then wipes the sink as Matthew quietly puts down the toilet seat, but it isn't long before she uses the hairspray on Matthew's face. Quickly recognizing Matthew, the girl introduces herself as Wendy and says they used to be classmates. Then, Wendy tends to Matthew's stinging eyes, and Matthew tells her about his quest quest to find his mystery girl, so Wendy offers to help Matthew, serving as his lookout whenever he needs to go inside a girl's room. Eventually, Matthew finds a match and waits for the girl of his dreams. Of course, Matthew immediately expresses his feelings for the girl when she shows up, only to be disappointed when she uses sign language. As it turns out, the girl is unable to speak, so she can't be the person Matthew was looking for. Because of what happened, Matthew can't help but sulk. On the other hand, Rod reminds him that women only bring trouble. Then, Rod talks about why they shouldn't waste their time on girls, making Matthew wonder what happened to his friend to make him hate women. After that, Rod asks Matthew about his ad. So Matthew explains that he's getting hopeless and it's the only way he can think of to find the mystery girl faster. The ad states that Matthew will wait for the girl every Thursday night in the dormitory basement, but Rod only makes fun of him. Unfortunately, Matthew has already spent several Thursdays in the dark, but the girl still doesn't show up. A few minutes later, Wendy arrives in the basement and offers Matthew something to eat, determined to cheer her friend up. However, as Wendy prepares their food, Matthew wonders what kind of wife the girl will be in the future. Then, they eventually eat together, and Wendy shares a sad story about her father. After dinner, Wendy dresses up Matthew as a girl. She tells him to pretend to be Francesca, whose goal is to make one of the girls in the dormitory reveal that she had a steamy session in the elevator during a blackout. Unfortunately, none of the girls admits to doing that in the elevator, and Wendy and Matthew's plan fails. So Wendy advises Matthew to get to know the young ladies, thinking he might get a vibe as to which one she is. Running out of options, Matthew starts talking to all the girls to figure out who his mystery girl is. Sadly, Matthew struggles to talk to Cynthia, so he talks to her as Francesca instead and realizes that there's more to her than meets the eye. Then, that night, Matthew has a conversation with a quiet girl named Dora, who thinks Matthew is only talking to her because he pities her. The next day, Arlene challenges Matthew again to a game of foosball. While playing, the two of them talk about the challenges of being a man and a woman, and Arlene ends up losing. Pissed, Arlene comes at Matthew and accuses him of cheating, but Matthew points out they didn't lay down any rules, so Arlene leaves, but she doesn't hide her distaste for Matthew. During his women's studies class, Matthew talks about how men and women think they're playing fair and they're being cheated, saying there are no defined rules between them. However, his teacher, Miss Stern, disagrees, stating that women know the rules that are imposed and enforced by the contemporary patriarchy of Western civilization. Unfortunately, there's nothing more Matthew can say to that. After their midterms, Matthew checks on the girl who doesn't come out of her room. Then, he notices that Dora isn't in her usual spot and looks for her, only to see her on the rooftop. Worried, Matthew rushes to the rooftop and bumps into two guys carrying a couch on the stairs, causing them to drop it and accidentally hit Cynthia. On the rooftop, Matthew convinces Dora not to jump, but she says she's doing that because she's ugly and very smart. At the same time, Dora says she knows what's in store for her, saying no one will ever have passion for her. Then, Dora admits that she doesn't really plan to jump, and Matthew eventually convinces her to return inside. After that, Dora and Matthew read a book together, and Matthew finds himself having fun. One night, Matthew talks to Wendy about the disadvantages of being Francesca. He says Rod didn't recognize him, and the guy started looking at his dress. Of course, Matthew knew what Rod was doing because he does it too. Then, Matthew admits to Wendy that he felt violated, and Wendy says she knows the feeling. At the same time, Matthew can't believe that Rod was ready to do it with him when he teased him while dressed as Francesca. After telling that story, Matthew realizes that women are more responsible than men. He also says women really rule the world, but the irony is that they are not pointed to recognizable positions. Matthew points out that men are afraid of putting women into the workplace because they understand that eventually women will rise to their proper levels on top. Days later, Matthew sits with Patty to share a bowl of cereal with her. Then, Patty says she's aware that Matthew likes someone, adding that she can tell by the way he looks at her. Unfortunately, Crick soon shows up, so Matthew finds a way to distract him and keep him away from Patty. Then, the big guy gets pissed and pushes Matthew away, causing Patty to step in. With no other choice, Matthew helps Patty take Crick down before stapling his hair to the floor and fleeing. Because of that, Crick is forced to cut his hair, and then he starts searching for Patty. However, Patty drops her small ball, and it isn't long before Crick finds them and comes after them. But in an unexpected twist, Patty's other ball drops and causes Crick to slip and fall down the stairs. Then Matthew sleeps with Patty, and they end up making a mess when Patty accidentally knocks over a small bottle of paint. In the morning, Matthew feels terrible for using Patty. He's worried that his mystery girl will find out what he did, but Rod tells him not to worry. Once again, Rod starts talking about how they should treat girls, forcing Matthew to ask why he hates women so much. However, Rod refuses to answer the question and just changes the subject. He says he slept with a girl named Francesca the other day, so Matthew gets mad because he knows his friend is lying and puts a heavy object on Rod's manhood stretcher. After a few weeks, Matthew still has no idea who the girl in the elevator is. Then suddenly, the girl shows up in the basement and tells Matthew to stop looking for her, saying she doesn't like him. Sadly, Matthew fails to see her face again because it's dark, so he goes after her when she leaves. Of course, Matthew loses her again, and he's left with no choice but to visit Wendy and mope. Feeling sad, Matthew tells Wendy that his mystery girl probably has a boyfriend or was just drunk when they were in the elevator. Matthew also says he grew up with low self-esteem because of his mom, which triggers Wendy to rant because she feels like parents always try to turn their children into something they don't want to be. Then, Wendy breaks her framed photograph with her mom, and they end up having a pillow fight. The next day, Wendy's mom finds her sleeping with Matthew in a pile of feathers. Matthew still continues searching for his mystery girl, but he feels like he's running out of time because the school year is about to end. He then makes peace with Arlene and teams up with her in foosball, and together they beat Crick and his buddy. After that, Matthew makes a video of Dora to show her how beautiful she is. Then he breaks the girls' dormitory window so he can pretend to be a maintenance guy again and fix it. Unfortunately, before he can do that, he finds Cynthia and sees her bruised face, resulting from the couch falling on her. Feeling bad, Matthew spends time with Cynthia and talks about the book she's reading. However, Cynthia gets pissed and kicks the wall, making a hole in it. On a different occasion, Matthew hangs out with Patty as Francesca because he doesn't know what to say to her as himself. He then asks Patty if she likes the maintenance guy, but the girl reveals she doesn't. At the same time, they get interrupted by Crick, who just won't leave Patty alone. So Matthew intervenes and gives Patty a chance to flee, but Crick refuses to stop and focuses his attention on Matthew instead. Thinking that Matthew was a lady, Crick tries to kiss him, forcing Matthew to bite off his tongue. Ashamed, Matthew doesn't tell anyone about what happened. Then, he finds Rod having a good time while watching Dora's video, but he gets surprised when he sees his friend's manhood. With no other choice, Rod explains his condition and reveals he once got humiliated in front of a girl because of it, and he asks Matthew to keep it a secret. At that moment, Matthew realizes that it's the reason why Rod resents women. However, he doesn't make fun of his friend and instead tries to cheer him up. As his time runs out, Matthew goes to the ladies' dormitory and confesses in front of 100 girls that he's looking for a mystery lady he met in the elevator. He then explains everything and pours his heart out, and suddenly, all the girls claim they're the ones Matthew's looking for. However, Matthew realizes that her mystery girl is the one who doesn't come out of her room, so he rushes to open her door. Unfortunately, the young lady says she's not Matthew's girl, but she adds that the girl might be a couple of doors down. With no time to waste, Matthew knocks on Patty's door and says he now knows she's his mystery girl, but Patty turns him away, saying he fell in love with another girl in that elevator. Patty also says that she tried to make Matthew fall in love with her, but Matthew is crazy for the other girl. Sadly, Matthew is forced to leave even though he really wants to be with Patty. Eventually, Matthew tries to accept that he can't be with Patty. Meanwhile, all the girls go on with their lives, and Cynthia discovers she's good at martial arts. Then, Matthew finally gets the courage to speak up in Miss Stern's class, saying the problem is there are too many groups in the world fighting one another, instead of trying to understand each other. Because of that, Matthew's classmates applaud him, and the teacher fails to say another word. On the other hand, Crick can no longer speak properly because of his tongue. Then, Matthew threatens to call the cops on Crick for what he did to him while he was dressed as Francesca, and it isn't long before the guy's other victims come forward too. Later on, Wendy confesses to Matthew that she's into girls, and Arlene becomes her girlfriend. At the same time, Matthew arranges for Rod and Dora to be trapped in the elevator, and they've been together ever since. After that, Matthew decides to visit Patty and treats her as if she's a gift he's waited so long to open. Then, they eventually kiss, and Matthew is happy that he's finally found the girl of his dreams.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.